Take my heart clean apart to help yours beat. Written by Softan. Read by Arashi. Dedue had grown up on stories of the merfolk. In Fargus, they called them sirens, but his mother had her own word for them, an old word even in Duscur, a word that spoke of the connection to the sea that his family had not quite lost, even though his father had brought the fisherman's daughter into town and grounded her at his forge. Dedue grew up with one foot anchored in his father's soil, and the other itching for the freedom of the open water. But life happened, and he spent long years away from the sandy beaches his mother once called home. In Fargus, sirens were nothing more than a tale for children, with no depth or belief or respect layered underneath. In their harsher harbors, no magic lurked beneath the tide, and Dedue forgot his mother's stories as he forgot his people's words and his family's gods. There was precious little of that life to hold on to, and thinking of it only seemed to hurt. And then Dimitri became king, and he sent Dedue home to rebuild with his people. And suddenly, there was reason to remember. He spends evenings by the fire in the big meeting hall, talking with elders as they all learn how to be survivors, how to hold on to themselves when all seems lost. The words come back to him quickly. His mother's stories do not. Dedue never learned his father's trade, but there are other places he is useful. He knows how to rig a boat, and he knows how to fish, and so he goes out on the sea with the men and does his best to feed his people. Things do not grow here as well as they once did, and they have never had the land to waste on livestock. Besides, Dedue likes the straightforward ritual of it. He wakes with the tides and takes out his little boat and net, and does not have to think at all until the weight of his catch forces him home. He is just turning into the cove by his house when he sees blood in the water. Even this close to shore, blood can be dangerous. Whatever seal met an unfortunate fate is going to attract predators, and Dedue has known more than enough sailors to be wary of any shark in a blood frenzy. But the red stain in the water seems to lead towards shore. He readies himself to instead see some gorily injured beast that has dragged itself onto the sand in a desperate bid to escape those dangers. At first glance, the beach appears empty, and Dedue cautiously lands his boat and drags her up onto the shore. The hairs on the back of his neck are prickling, some echoed sense of unease crawling up his spine, and he remains on alert as he approaches the little shack where he stores his boat and guts his fish. It is just a thatched roof and some supports with no walls or door to speak of, so he gets quite close indeed before he can see that something is wrong. Dedue drops the boat and stares. First of all, there's blood everywhere. Secondly, the wounded creature lying unconscious, if not dead, behind his fish-gutting table is certainly no seal. It is difficult to tell what it is, however. A water creature, to be sure, with a darkly scaled tail as long as Dedue is tall. Its torso, however, appears to be pale flesh, though its arms taper into horrible, scaled talons. It also appears to have hair and a face, and it is bleeding from several huge gashes on its abdomen. Dedue steps closer, intending to investigate, but it appears the thing is not so unconscious after all. In a flurry of movement far faster than Dedue could have imagined, it flips around and coils in on itself, hiding beneath the table with fangs and talons bared. Dedue pauses, holding up his hands. "I mean you no harm," he says, feeling rather silly. He's talking to a fish. But his mother's words echo in the back of his mind, shaking loose as he recalls that in her stories the merfolk did speak. He tries again, more formally, in the old cadence of a grandfather. "You are friend here." The thing uncoils ever so slightly. Intrigued, it makes a funny creaking sound in the back of its throat, and then widens its strange, inhuman eyes at him. "Do not let my injured appearance fool you," it says, voice both harsh and soft like shifting sands. "My talons are still sharp, and so is my spear." Dedue nods at it in the boat beside him. "There is no need for such posturing. I do not harm beasts I do not intend to eat." The thing makes an absolutely horrible noise, and Dedue realizes it has attempted to laugh. "You would call me beast, boy? Do you not know what I am? How quickly your people forget." "You are Zarahars," Dedue says, certain now. "Mermaids, we might call you now, if we called anyone anything. My people are gone, killed by the white men in the east. Few now live who remember any of our legends." "I care not for the wars of men," the mermaid said. "We are better off forgotten. I should not be here now." It moves, as if to try to slither away, and Dedue steps forward with a hand outstretched. "Allow me to help you," he says quickly. "You must not go back to the water in such a state." "As if a shark could best me," the creature says, but it does pause. "What help can you offer? There's nothing useful in this house." It is Dedue's turn to laugh. "This is not my house, friend. I use this place to store my boat. Can you move on your own? Or should I carry you?" The mermaid makes a noise that, despite its alien nature, still reads as exasperation. It crawls out carefully from under the table, and gestures with its head for Dedue to lead the way. Dedue does not have the same confidence in the creature's ability. The path up to his house is steep, and the long tail that surely makes this being swift and powerful in the water is a hindrance as it drags itself across the land. Its breathing is labored before they have even made it to the hill, and as the path winds upwards, it slows and falters until its arms finally give out, and it lies in the sand, gasping for air. Dedue has been maintaining a careful distance. If nothing else, it is clear this creature has pride, and he wanted to allow it the comfort of space. But now he steps closer to again offer assistance. The mermaid hisses, and he tries to assume a defensive posture, but it can no longer support its own weight and ends up collapsing back down. "Hey, come here. It is all right. Let me help you." "Leave me to die," the creature pants. "Throw my body back into the sea. If you would do me a kindness, it is too late." "Nonsense," Dedue says, and then, fighting the instinctive fear of a wild animal with large claws, he scoops the thing into his arms and lifts it off the ground. The mermaid flails, great tail smacking Dedue in the side and nearly knocking him to the ground, but after a moment it settles, wrapping its arms around Dedue's neck to help him balance its weight. It is very heavy indeed. Only the long years of training his strength at King Dimitri's side leave him strong enough to carry it, and even as it stands, he is not sure that he could carry it particularly far. He finds himself wishing that Dimitri were here, not just for his great strength, but for his support and his commanding presence. He might not know what to do with a mythical beast appearing wounded on his doorstep, but he would not allow the creature to walk over him, as it has Dedue. He would take charge and find a solution. As it is, Dedue is alone. He must set the creature down to open his back door, and by then it has recovered enough that it can slither after him into the kitchen under its own power. Dedue looks at the smears of blood it has left on the floor already, and thinks of the beautiful rugs he has in most of the other rooms of his house. "Wait here," he says. "I will return with healing salve and bandages." The creature looks at him, presumably in assent, and rather than simply standing there staring at it, Dedue heads to the bathroom to collect supplies. When he returns, the mermaid is peering around at his kitchen equipment with interest, and as he enters, it turns its unsettling gaze on him. "What is this place?" "It is a kitchen," Dedue says, "a room for preparing food." "I have heard how the humans like to set fire to their prey," the mermaid says. "I did not expect that they did so inside a dwelling. Are those torture devices?" He points to Dedue's egg beater. Dedue laughs awkwardly. "We do not torture our meat," he says. "We kill it, and then cook it. These tools are mostly used to prepare other kinds of foods. Will you allow me to tend to your wounds?" A ripple of tension runs through the creature at the suggestion, but after a moment, it nods, laying back on the floor so that its wounded side is exposed. Dedue kneels very carefully at its side, bending down to inspect the shredded skin. Up close, the gashes look even worse, deep and jagged. No shark did this, and Dedue looks down at the strong and terrifying beast lying in front of him, and wonders what could possibly be down there that could injure it like this. All the more reason to be careful on his boat. He takes the damp towel he brought and wipes away as much of the blood as he can, and then opens the jar of enhanced salve he keeps on hand for more serious injuries, dipping his fingers into it and carefully rubbing it into the deepest of the slashes. The creature tenses and makes a pained noise, and Dedue instinctively smooths his other hand down its stomach, trying to soothe it. Miraculously, it seems to work. He does his best to be thorough with the salve, using up most of the jar on the mermaid's destroyed flesh. It cannot work miracles, but at least, by the time he's done, the bleeding has stopped, and the smaller wounds are beginning to close. The creature is calm now, pliable in Dedue's hands, and so, when he pulls it up to sit against his lap so he can wrap the bandages around its abdomen, it doesn't resist at all. Once it understands what Dedue is trying to do, it even helps, although, once the wrap is fastened in place, it looks down at it with a frown. "I cannot wear this into the water." "Likely not," Dedue agrees. The creature is settled between his legs, leaning against his chest, and he wraps his arms around its waist for ease. "But it is necessary to hold the salve in place and keep you from ripping your skin open again. We will have to become accustomed to each other." The creature is much bigger than Dedue, but its torso is not quite as long. It leans its head against his shoulder and looks up at him. "You may call me Hubert," it offers. "Hubert," Dedue repeats. The name is foreign, but it's not as strange as he might have expected. "I am called Dedue." "I owe you a great debt, Dedue," Hubert says. "I will pay it as you see fit." "Let us wait until you have actually recovered to speak of debts," Dedue says. "For the moment, you should rest. Would you like me to carry you somewhere more comfortable?" "You would bring me to your nest?" Hubert asks. "I have gotten what I need of you. I may slit your throat and gorge myself on your virile flesh." "Ah, but how would you pay your debt then?" Dedue asks. He acknowledges that he should be afraid, but he has already brought this creature into his home, into his lap. His bed hardly makes much difference. "The more comfortable you are, the more quickly you will heal, and the sooner I can be rid of you. I have a catch of fish I must see to, and in the meantime, you should sleep." "Very well," Hubert says, wrapping its arms around Dedue's neck and its tail around Dedue's waist. "Put me where you will." Hubert is far too long for the bed, of course, but it gamely curls up so that only the end of its tail hangs off the side of the bed. It seems fascinated by the pillows, and it runs its claws over the blanket with a delicate sort of reverence. "Your nest is strange," it says, "but comfortable. I like it." Dedue chuckles. "I am glad it pleases you. I will be down at the shack for a few hours, but no one will bother you here. You are safe under my protection." Hubert gives him an odd look, but it nods. "I will rest, as you have decreed." It pauses, faltering. "Thank you." Dedue smiles. "Rest, friend. When you wake, there will be food, and we can speak further." Dedue finishes cleaning his catch and brings it home, carefully packing the excess into his preservation cupboard before setting a pot of water to boil for potatoes and filleting 2 large fish for their dinner. No one will look askance at him taking a day to himself. All of them occasionally need their space, after everything they have been through, and Dedue more than most. Once he has the potatoes in the water and the sauce for the fish set in the pot to simmer, he goes to check on his guest. The salve should be doing its work, but it's possible that Hubert has internal injuries in addition, or that he woke in an unfamiliar place and panicked or crawled away, or any number of other things. If Dedue had an idea in his head of what he would find in his bedroom, it is not what he finds. The creature in his bed is soundly asleep, but instead of a monster, there is what appears to be a very naked human man. Dedue hadn't been able to guess at Hubert's gender before this, but however it identifies, apparently in this form, it has a penis. A very evident penis that Dedue can't stop staring at. As if sensing his presence, Hubert stirs, stretching its legs and opening its eyes to look up at Dedue. The eyes are the same, an inhuman sort of grass green, and for some reason, that settles Dedue's nerves. "Oh," says Hubert, glancing down at itself. "I must have healed enough to transform. This will make things easier." Dedue swallows, gaze flicking to Hubert's crotch over and over as he tries to think. I am preparing a meal. Would you like something to wear?" "Oh, yes, you do like to cover yourselves," Hubert says, sitting up and looking down at its crotch. "And small wonder, when you have such delicate pieces out on display. So inefficient." Dedue refrains from asking where mermaids keep their genitals, and instead turns to his dresser and fishes out a pair of pants and a shirt. "They will be too wide for you, I fear, but it is nothing a belt cannot fix." Hubert pulls on the shirt, which drapes down to mid-thigh. As a man, it is a good head shorter than Dedue. "Is this not sufficient?" "I suppose, provided you are not cold." "Bah!" says Hubert. "Even this feeble form can withstand much greater chill than this." It stands and stretches again. "Where do you relieve yourselves?" Hubert shows it the bathroom, and does his best to explain the toilet. And then he heads back down to the kitchen to stir his sauce and put the fish on. Hubert comes in a few minutes later, draping itself around Dedue's back and sniffing the air. "The smell is like food, but not," it says. "What are you doing?" "I am cooking," Dedue says, bemused by the touch. Earlier, it seemed the creature was quite wary of such things, but it has its long arm around Dedue's waist and is leaning heavily onto him. "Potatoes and fish. That looks like no fish I have ever seen. It is filleted, and I am grilling it. And you expect me to eat this? If it disgusts you, I have more raw." Hubert is quiet for a long moment, fingers worrying against Dedue's side. "I will try it." "Are you cold?" Dedue asks, trying to find an explanation for the closeness. "You are warm," Hubert says. "It is different. I enjoy it. Am I bothering you?" "No," Dedue says, although he is not entirely sure. Certainly he is not comfortable, but he is unsure if he would ever be comfortable with a beautiful monster in his home. Finally, the fish is done, and he breaks away from Hubert to collect plates and serve their meal. Hubert sits across from him at the table and immediately stretches a leg out to rest against Dedue's, and Dedue tries to pretend that he's unaffected. He's having a very hard time avoiding the memory of Hubert's body sprawled out naked in his bed, all of its blue-white skin on display, framing its gorgeous cock. It had been years now since Dedue had had a man in his bed, and this thing that is not a man is somehow even more desirable. Its glowing eyes and plush pink lips, the dark tinge to its fingers and toes, even in this form. The way it won't stop touching Dedue. He wants to lunge across the table and slam it against the counter. He wants to see it unleash its immense strength and pin him to the ground. "You are not eating your food," Hubert says. "Is there a ritual I am meant to complete first?" Dedue does not often pray to the gods that abandoned his people, but it is a better excuse than admitting where his thoughts were, and he remembers the words from his childhood. He has Hubert repeat the prayer with him, and then he stuffs his mouth with the 2 hot mashed potatoes, rather than keep looking at Hubert's ethereal face. The burn is grounding, and he takes a breath, and then warns Hubert about the temperature. "I have never eaten hot food," Hubert admits. It scoops some potatoes onto its fork, a bit clumsily, and then stares at them. "What is a potato?" "It is a root," Dedue explains. "We eat them in many ways. These are boiled and mashed. The texture is generally considered easy to eat." Hubert flicks its tongue out to taste, and Dedue sees that it is forked. It tastes warm, fatty. "It has fat added to it for texture and heartiness." Hubert hums and eats some more. Dedue counts that as a win. In defense to Hubert's unfamiliarity with human foods, Dedue has plated its fish dry and served the lemon caper sauce in a small cup on the side. Once Hubert has finished its potatoes, it sticks its fork into the yellow gloop and watches it drip back into the cup with distaste. "You are meant to put it on the fish," Dedue explains, showing how his own fillet is smothered in the stuff. "I was not sure if you would enjoy the strong flavor." "I think I will pass," Hubert says delicately, gently rubbing its foot against Dedue's leg to soften the rejection. It wrinkles its nose at the fish and pokes at it. "You have killed it and killed it again. I prefer mine with some fight left in it." It takes a bite, though, and its expression clears some. "Acceptable? If you do not think of it as fish, it is actually quite nice," Hubert admits. "But it does not taste like fish." "All right," Dedue says, amused. "We will call it something else then." "So easily?" "I want to make you as comfortable as possible while you are a guest in my home." "Guest?" Dedue is surprised it would not know this word when it had known so many others. "A visitor," he tries. "A temporary resident to whom I am extending my hospitality." Hubert says. "I am more than that now." "What?" "I have let you touch me," it explains. "I have slept in your nest and eaten your food, and I have transformed into the form of your desires. Would you reject me?" Dedue's mother's stories come back to him then. Stories of sea wives that swam beside their husbands' boats to bless their catch while their children grew only legs, but still dreamed of deep grottos glowing with their people's eerie light. "I would not bind you," he says carefully, "but if you are meant to entice me, you have succeeded." Hubert is silent for a long moment. "I would prefer to be bound," it admits, "if you allow me to return. I will not survive." "Your wounds have already healed well. And where did I get them?" Hubert raises a pale eyebrow. "My emperor is dead. There is nothing left for me but to avenge her, and you have seen how well that is going for me. If you use me, at least one of us will be happy." Dedue frowns. "I would not be happy to use you," he says, "but I am happy for you to stay. I know something of grief myself." "Not this grief," Hubert says bitterly. "You humans have nothing like the bond we shared. You have no concept of how long I have served nothing but her will." "No," Dedue agrees. "I have no idea what you have lost, but I have lost my family and my people, and then I have been sent away by those who became family to me afterwards." I know what it means to be alone. I know what it is to hear the silent echo of your heart. And I know how to get up in the morning afterwards. Hubert searches his face. How do you do it? I find other things to give me purpose, Dedue says easily. I go out on my little boat and I fish. I cook. I am trying to coax a garden into growing. And through this, I have met new people and made new connections. Perhaps none of them will mean to me what those I have lost did, but that does not mean that they have no value. I can make others' lives better and easier, and I am going to do that until I cannot any longer. I have always been a set of talons, Hubert says quietly. I have never done for others what you do. I am sharp, I protect, and I eradicate the enemy, and that is all I have ever done. When they came, and I could do nothing. Its throat clicks loudly as it swallows, and Dedue pushes its glass of water towards it. It drinks, and then continues. We fought. We all fought. My emperor, my mate, all of our people. And now, we are all dead. I am as dead as the rest, for failing them. Dedue reaches across the table and takes its hand. I saved your life, he says. Would you reject my gift so easily? Hubert looks down. It is a gift I do not know how to accept. Stay, Dedue says. We will figure out the rest. They finish their dinner quietly, Hubert's eerie green eyes watching Dedue's practiced movements. It follows Dedue to the sink when he stands to wash the dishes, and wraps itself around his waist again, and Dedue allows himself the comfort of leaning into its warmth. He had been alone for a long time, and it has been even longer since he last had anyone touch him so affectionately. If it brings Hubert some peace as well, who is he to deny either of them? Sylvain had sent some books from the palace library that he thought would interest him. He has not seen any of his family in Fargus in the 3 years he has been here, but Sylvain and Dimitri write to him, and the new court physician Mercedes has taken up a correspondence with him in an effort to learn more about his people and their healing practices. He mostly only translates for her, but recently they have also begun sending each other food recipes, in addition to medicinal ones. Perhaps he is not entirely alone. But it is still a huge change to settle down on his couch to read for the evening, and have a lithe, slender being slither itself into his lap. Hubert is doing a very good impression of a human man overall, but it does not move like one. What is that? It asks, looking at the book. Is it art? After a manner of speaking, Dedue says, wrapping an arm around its shoulders, and resettling so it can cuddle, and he can still read the book. The symbols represent words. We call it writing, and this is a book. Ah, Hubert says. Writing. We have seen this before, but this writing looks strange. It is the language of Fargus, Dedue explains. I lived there for a time, after my people were killed. Fargus? Across the mountains to the east. Ah! Dedue chuckles. If you stay, I may have to teach you their language. The king of Fargus has been threatening to visit, and there will be no way to avoid him in this house. Threatening? Hubert immediately becomes tense, and Dedue sees its fingers darken and lengthen back into claws. No, Dedue says. He is a friend. Ah, Hubert says again, confused. Threatening? I do not wish for him to see me in this life, Dedue admits. He sent me here to be happy, because I was not happy amongst his people. But I have not been happy here either. It is not his fault, but he will want to fix it all the same." Hubert snuggles closer, setting a more human again, thank the gods, hand on Dedue's thigh. "What would make you happy?" "What would make you happy?" Hubert is silent. Dedue picks up the book and begins to read. Hubert falls asleep curled against his side, and Dedue keeps reading for a little while longer before kissing its hair, surprisingly soft, and lifting it into his arms to carry it to bed with him. It snuggles into the pillow when he sets it down, and Dedue can't help smiling at it. For a creature that initially seemed so alien, perhaps it is not so different after all. He washes up and dresses down, and then crawls into bed beside Hubert, and Hubert squirms in close without appearing to wake up at all. Dedue wraps his arms around its thin shoulders and holds it close, and he falls asleep faster than he has in years.